The United States, it's a country so big and diverse, it can feel almost impossible to get your head around. So, how do you even begin to make sense of it all? Well, in the next few minutes, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to build a solid understanding of the U.S., literally from the ground up.
So to really wrap our heads around the sheer scale we're talking about, just picture a world map. The United States is the fourth largest country on the entire planet by land area. Yeah, only Russia, Canada, and China are bigger. We are talking about a true continent-spanning nation here. And that massive size, it brings up a huge challenge, right? How on earth do you make sense of one single place with so many different landscapes, so many different kinds of people, and so many histories all living under one flag? That's the puzzle we're going to try and piece together.
So here's how we're going to break it down, in 4 key parts. First, we'll get the lay of the land, the physical country itself. Then we'll look at the diverse people who came to call it home. After that, we'll see how they built an economy on that land. And finally, we'll unpack the unique system of government designed to hold the whole thing together. All right, let's dive right in. To really get America, you've got to start with the land itself. It's the physical stage where this whole incredible story plays out.
Now, when you look at a map, geographers typically break this huge country down into 5 major landforms. You've got the coastal plains running along the east, then the ancient Appalachian Mountains, which were the first big barrier for people moving west. Then there's the massive interior plains of the heartland, the soaring mountains and plateaus of the west, and finally, you hit the Pacific coast.
And what's really wild is how these different landforms create these incredibly different climates. Think about it. The north gets slammed by blizzards, while the interior swings from bitterly cold winters to blazing hot summers. The Pacific Northwest is just drenched in rain, while the East Coast has to worry about hurricanes. It's like several different countries, climatically speaking.
But there's a massive upside to all this variety, a just staggering wealth of natural resources. The country is absolutely loaded with everything from fuels like coal, natural gas, and oil to huge forests for timber and one of the biggest supplies of fresh water on the planet.
Okay, so we've got this vast resource-rich land. The next big question is, who are the people who came to live here? Because at its very core, the story of America is a story of movement, of migration.
And we're talking about a story that goes way, way back. The very first people arrived more than 15,000 years ago. Then much, much later, starting around the 15th and 16th centuries, 2 other huge movements of people began: colonization by Europeans and the absolutely brutal Atlantic slave trade, which forcibly moved millions of Africans to the Americas.
Now, the arrival of Europeans kicked off something that would literally change the world. It's known as the Columbian Exchange. This wasn't just about people moving. It was this widespread transfer of plants, animals, technology, ideas, and, tragically, diseases between what we now call the Old and New Worlds. And the impact of this? It was absolutely world-altering, in both good and terrible ways. On one side, new foods from the Americas, like corn and potatoes, actually led to a population boom back in Europe. But on the other, diseases brought from Europe, which Native Americans had no immunity to, caused a devastating, catastrophic collapse of their populations.
So over hundreds of years, this constant stream of people from all over the globe created what we often call a melting pot, a really complex blend of cultures. And while people have come from everywhere, those early and powerful influences from places like Great Britain, France, and Spain really left a deep mark on the nation's language, laws, and institutions.
Okay, so we've got this diverse population on this massive piece of land. So how in the world did they come together to build one of the planet's most powerful economies? Well, the answer, believe it or not, circles right back to the geography. Just like the country has those geographic regions we talked about, it also developed distinct economic regions, and each one built an economy that was really tied to its specific environment and the resources it had.
And here's a perfect example of how that works. Take the Northeast. The ground there is super rocky, terrible for farming. But it had lots of fast-flowing streams, which were perfect for powering the machines in the first factories. Now contrast that with the Midwest. Its incredibly fertile land and great rivers made it an agricultural powerhouse, the breadbasket to the world. Geography was destiny.
All right, we've got the land, the people, the economy. Now for the final crucial piece of the puzzle. What's the system that's designed to hold this huge, complicated nation together?
At its core, the United States is what's called a federal republic. What that means is power is shared between the national government and the individual state governments. And the entire blueprint for this was laid out in the Constitution, which went into effect all the way back in 1789.
And a really key idea behind the whole thing is something called checks and balances. See, the founders were really worried about any one group or person getting way too powerful, so they designed a system where each part of the government can limit or check the power of the other parts.
And here's the nuts and bolts of how it works. The federal government is split into 3 equal branches. You have the legislative branch, which is Congress, and their job is to make the laws. Then you have the executive branch, headed by the president, who carries out and enforces those laws. And finally, the judicial branch, with the Supreme Court at the top, which interprets the laws.
So why does any of this matter to you? Because this whole structure, these 3 branches, the checks and balances, it's the absolute foundation for American law, politics, and daily life. It shapes everything from how elections work to how our basic rights are protected. It's the operating system of the country.
So when you pull it all together, from its enormous geography and diverse peoples to its powerful economy and that unique system of government, you see that the United States has always been this grand, ongoing experiment. An experiment in balancing all these complex and powerful forces. And that leaves us with one final, very important question to think about. What does the future hold for this experiment?